In my family, your life doesn't really begin until you've given life to someone else. Your own accomplishments, your career, your passions, your very identity. It's all just a pleasant, but ultimately meaningless, prelude to the main event, motherhood. In the world, according to the women of my family, your worth as a woman is measured in offspring, by that metric. I, at 35 years old, happily married, with a successful career and a life I loved, was a complete and utter zero. This deeply held belief was most aggressively personified by my Aunt Carol and her daughter, my cousin Jessica. They were the co-presidents of what I privately called the Mom Club, a sacred, sanctimonious, and deeply exclusive society whose only entry requirement was a human child. I remember this past summer, at our annual 4th of July barbecue, the entire family was gathered in my aunt's perfectly manicured backyard. The air was thick with the smell of cut grass and grilling burgers. The conversation, as it always did, revolved entirely around the children. My cousin Jennifer was recounting a harrowing tale about her son's latest ear infection. My other cousin, Megan, was bragging about her daughter getting into a prestigious preschool. I tried to join the conversation. "That's great about Sophie's school," I said, speaking of which. "The firm I work for, we just landed the contract to design the new Children's Discovery Garden at the Botanical Gardens. It's a huge project. I'm so excited." My Aunt Carol, who had been listening with rapt attention to the story about the ear infection, turned to me and gave me a pat on the hand, the kind you give a sweet, simple-minded child. "Oh, that's nice, dear," she said, her voice full of a gentle, dismissive pity. "A little garden for the children. That's lovely." She then turned back to the other mothers. "But wait until you have children of your own, Anna. Then you'll know what it means to be really busy. You'll know what real work is." And just like that, my biggest professional achievement to date, the culmination of years of hard work, was reduced to a nice little garden, a trivial hobby, completely insignificant when compared to the real, important, and apparently much more difficult work of dealing with a toddler's ear infection. Have you ever been part of a group of family, a circle of friends where there's one single topic that completely dominates every conversation? And if you're not a member of that specific club, you are treated as if you are fundamentally invisible in my family. That club was motherhood, and I was the one who had consciously and happily decided not to pay the membership dues. If you've ever been judged for a life choice that makes you happy, hit that subscribe button. You are my people. My husband, Tom, and I are child-free by choice. It wasn't a sad accident. It was a decision we made together. We love our life. I am a landscape architect. I spend my days designing beautiful, functional, and sustainable public spaces. I build parks and gardens and greenways. I love my work. Tom is a university professor, a man who is passionate about history and about teaching. We have a wonderful, quiet life together, a life filled with travel, with friends, with books, with long hikes with our dog. Our life is full. It is not empty simply because it is not filled with children. This concept was utterly, completely foreign to my family. They couldn't understand it. They saw my choice not as a valid, alternative path to a happy life, but as a tragic failure, a sign of a deep, personal immaturity. I remember telling my aunt and my cousin years ago that we weren't planning on having children. We were at a family brunch. Jessica, who had just had her first child, had looked at me with a look of pure, uncomprehending pity. "Oh, Anna," she'd said, her voice a soft, sad whisper, as if I had just confessed to a terminal illness. "You'll change your mind. You'll see. Once you hold a baby in your arms, everything changes. You'll finally understand what life is really about." "I think I already know what my life is about, Jessica," I had said. My voice polite but firm, but they didn't hear me. They just saw me as a project, a lost cause, a sad, childless woman who just needed to be shown the light. And now, the golden child, my cousin Jessica, was pregnant with her second child. This was, in my family's world, an event on par with a royal wedding, and it meant that the condescension, the pity, the constant, low-grade dismissal of my own life was about to be dialed up to an 11. The centerpiece of this celebration of my own inadequacy was, of course, The baby shower. The planning for the baby shower began months in advance. It was not to be a simple, backyard affair. It was to be an event. My Aunt Carol and Jessica's older sister, Megan, were the co-chairs of the planning committee. I was, of course, expected to be involved, but not in the planning. I was not a mother. So what could I possibly know about planning a celebration of motherhood? No, my role was to be the dutiful, helpful, and silent subordinate. Anna, sweetie, be a dear and run these invitations to the calligrapher for me. Would you, my aunt would ask. Anna, can you pick up the deposit check for the caterer? I'm just so swamped with the guest list. My cousin would text. I did it all with a smile. My familiar role as the sensible, helpful one. But I noticed, with a growing sense of unease, that I was never actually included in the real conversations. When they would discuss the theme, or the guest list, or the games, and I would offer a suggestion, I would be met with a polite but firm dismissal. That's a cute idea, Anna, Jessica would say, but you wouldn't get it. This is a mom thing. I was the family mule, useful for carrying the heavy things, but not welcome at the strategy table. The final, and most profound, act of my exclusion came a week before the party. I was at my aunt's house, dropping off a box of party favors I had been tasked with assembling. The dining room table was covered in the beautiful, expensive, letterpressed invitations. My aunt and my cousin Megan were in the middle of addressing them. I saw the guest list. It was a long, sprawling list of over 100 names. I saw the names of all our female relatives. I saw the names of all of Jessica's friends. And I saw, with a small, cold jolt, that my name was not on the list. I'm sure the look on my face was one of pure, wounded confusion. I just assumed it was a mistake, an oversight. Aunt Carol, I began, my voice a little hesitant. I was just looking at the list. I think you might have forgotten someone. My aunt and my cousin exchanged a quick, uncomfortable glance. A glance that told me instantly that this was no mistake. Oh, honey, my aunt began, her voice taking on the gentle, placating tone she used when she was about to deliver a difficult truth to a simple-minded child. We needed to talk to you about that. She sat me down at the table, a look of profound, sympathetic sadness on her face. Jessica and I. We made a difficult decision about the shower, she said. We decided that we wanted it to be a very specific kind of event. A safe space. A safe space, I repeated, the words tasting like nonsense in my mouth. Yes, Jessica said, chiming in, her own face a mask of loving, sisterly concern, a safe space for mothers. A place where we can all talk, freely and openly, about the real, profound, and sometimes difficult joys of motherhood, about childbirth, about breastfeeding, about things that you, Anna, just wouldn't be able to relate to. We didn't want you to feel uncomfortable or left out. I just stared at them. They were excluding me from a family event, from the celebration of my own cousin's new baby. And they were framing it as an act of kindness, an act of protecting me from feeling left out. The gaslighting was so audacious, so complete. It was almost a work of art. So you're not inviting me, I said, my voice flat. Because I don't have children. We're not inviting you because it is a party for mothers, my aunt corrected me gently. It is a celebration of a certain kind of life experience, an experience you don't share. You wouldn't enjoy it. You would feel awkward. We are doing this for you. Honey, can't you see that? I looked at their faces, at their sincere, self-righteous, and deeply, profoundly condescending expressions. And I saw the truth. This wasn't about protecting me. This was about excluding me. This was a final, public declaration of my status in this family. I was not a full member of the club. I was a childless, and therefore a lesser, woman. And I was not welcome at their sacred, maternal ceremony. I should have fought them. I should have screamed. I should have told them how cruel, how judgmental, how utterly insane they were being. But I was so stunned, so deeply and completely blindsided by the sheer, breathtaking audacity of their cruelty, that I couldn't speak. So I just stood up. I see, I said, my voice a quiet, hollow sound. Well, thank you for your concern. I hope you all have a wonderful time. And I turned and I walked out of that house, the house I had spent so many happy childhood holidays in, feeling like a stranger, an outcast, a woman who had just been formally, officially, and with a great deal of loving concern, excommunicated from her own family. And the reason for my excommunication, I had dared to build a life for myself that was different from theirs, and that was a sin they could not forgive. I walked out of my aunt's house in a daze, her final, sweetly poisonous words echoing in my ears. "We are doing this for you. Honey, can't you see that?" I got into my car and drove, with no destination in mind. The world outside my windshield a blurry, meaningless watercolor of greens and blues. I was on autopilot, my mind a silent, screaming chaos of humiliation and disbelief. They hadn't just uninvited me, they had excommunicated me from the one club my family truly valued, the sacred, holy church of motherhood. And they had done it under the guise of kindness. They had wrapped their cruel, judgmental exclusion in the pretty, pink and blue ribbon of their own magnanimous concern. It was a masterwork of passive-aggressive, familial warfare. When I finally got home, I did the only thing I could think to do. I called my husband, Tom, and as soon as I heard his warm, steady, "Hey, you, the dam broke," I told him everything, my voice a ragged, ugly torrent of sobs and shattered sentences. I expected him to comfort me, to tell me they didn't mean it, to try and smooth things over, as he often did. But his reaction this time was different. After I finished, the silence on the other end of the line was not soft or gentle. It was a hard, cold, and heavy silence. They did what he finally said, his voice a low, dangerous hum I had never heard from him before. "Anna, that is not just rude. That is not just insensitive. That is a deliberate, calculated, and deeply cruel act. That is not a family. A family doesn't do that." His anger on my behalf, his immediate and absolute validation of my own pain, was a strange and powerful comfort. He didn't try to make excuses for them. He saw their action for what it was, an act of war. The next day, the second wave of the attack came, just as I knew it would. It was a group text message from my Aunt Carol, sent to all the women in the family, a list that, of course, no longer included me. My other cousin, Megan, forwarded it to me with a string of angry face emojis. "Hi ladies," the text began, a cheerful, breezy opening to a deeply manipulative piece of propaganda. "Just a quick reminder about Jessica's shower on Saturday. Can't wait to celebrate with all you amazing moms. And just to be clear, as I know some of you were asking about Anna, after a lot of careful thought, Jessica and I made the very difficult decision to keep this a moms-only event. As Anna doesn't have children, we felt it would be incredibly awkward and uncomfortable for her to sit through all of our talk about labor and breastfeeding. We are doing this to protect her feelings and to create a safe space for the rest of us to share our unique experiences. We know Anna, with her big heart, will understand that this decision was made with nothing but love. See you all on Saturday." I read the text, and I felt a fresh wave of helpless, impotent rage wash over me. She had controlled the narrative. She had painted herself as the thoughtful, sensitive protector, and me as the fragile, childless creature who needed to be shielded from the profound mysteries of motherhood. It was brilliant, it was evil, and it was working. My initial plan for the weekend of the baby shower was to lean into the tragedy. My plan was to disconnect my phone, draw the curtains, open a bottle of very cheap, very bad wine, and spend 48 hours wallowing in a self-pitying cocoon of sad movies and Ben & Jerry's. I was going to let them win. I was going to let them make me feel exactly as they wanted me to feel: small, lonely, and left out. Tom came home from work that Friday evening to find me in the opening stages of this plan. I was in my pajamas, on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, watching the opening credits of a tragic romance movie. He took one look at my sad, pathetic setup, and he shook his head. "Nope," he said, taking the remote out of my hand and turning off the television. "Absolutely not." "What are you doing?" I mumbled from inside my blanket cocoon. "I'm busy being heartbroken." "I can see that," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "And you have every right to be, but you are not going to let them win. You are not going to let them succeed in making you feel miserable." "What else am I supposed to do, Tom?" I asked, my voice a pathetic whimper. Crash the party. No, he said, a slow, brilliant smile spreading across his face. We are going to do something much, much better. They have given you a gift. Anna, the gift of a completely free, unobligated weekend. A weekend with no forced small talk, no condescending relatives, no family drama. We are not going to waste that gift. You are going to pack a bag. Right now. We are going to do something fun, something adventurous, something, he said, his eyes twinkling, that we could absolutely, positively, never, ever do if we had kids. The idea was so audacious, so completely at odds with the pit of misery I had been so happily digging for myself, that it shocked me out of my stupor. What are you talking about? I'm talking about a jailbreak, he said. Pack for a 2-day hike, warm clothes, good boots. We're going to the mountains, right now. And so, an hour later, I found myself in our car, driving north, away from the city, away from my family, away from the suffocating weight of my own sadness. The car was packed with a tent, 2 sleeping bags, and enough trail mix to feed a small army. The hike the next day was a grueling, beautiful, and profoundly healing ordeal. We climbed for hours, up a steep, rocky trail that led to a remote mountain peak. The physical exertion was a welcome relief from the emotional turmoil in my head. I had to focus on my breathing, on the placement of my feet, on the burning in my legs. I didn't have the energy to feel sorry for myself. We reached the summit just as the sun was beginning to set. We were exhausted, we were sweaty, and we were completely, utterly alone. The view was breathtaking, a 360-degree panorama of rolling, tree-covered mountains, bathed in the golden, late afternoon light. We set up our small tent, we built a fire, and we sat there, drinking hot chocolate from a thermos, as the sky turned from a brilliant orange to a deep, star-dusted indigo. You know, I said into the quiet, right about now, they're probably playing that stupid game where they have to guess the flavor of the baby food in the diaper. Tom laughed, a warm, happy sound that echoed in the quiet of the mountain. And I bet my last dollar your Aunt Carol is telling everyone how brave you're being about being excluded. And in that moment, sitting on top of that mountain, under a blanket of 1 billion stars, my family, their petty judgments, their small enclosed world, it all felt so insignificant, so far away, so small. They were in a stuffy, over-decorated living room, playing silly games and congratulating themselves on their own biological good fortune. And I was here, on top of a mountain, with the man I loved, under the vast, silent, and deeply beautiful expanse of the universe. And I realized, with a profound and liberating clarity, that I was not the one who was missing out. They thought they had punished me by excluding me. They thought they had made me feel small and lonely. But they had done the exact opposite. They had, with their one, cruel act, given me the greatest gift of all. They had given me a weekend of freedom, a weekend to be reminded of the beauty, and the adventure, and the profound, quiet joy of the life that I had chosen. A life that was so much bigger, so much wilder, and so much more beautiful than their small, judgmental world could ever comprehend. We hiked back down the mountain the next day, my legs aching, my body tired, but my spirit feeling lighter than it had in years. As we got back to the car and the cell service returned, my phone buzzed with 100 notifications. It was the social media fallout from the baby shower. I idly scrolled through the pictures. There was my cousin Jessica, looking smug and triumphant, surrounded by a mountain of expensive gifts. There was my Aunt Carol, beaming with pride. There were all the women of my family, smiling for the camera, all proud members of the same, exclusive club. A week ago, those pictures would have destroyed me. They would have been a painful, visual confirmation of my own exclusion. But now, after a weekend spent in the vast, quiet dignity of the mountains, I looked at them, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a quiet, distant pity for them, for their small, enclosed world, for their narrow, one-dimensional definition of a life well lived. The weekend was over. I had been uninvited from their family, but in doing so, I had finally, truly, been invited back into my own life, and I was ready for the next adventure. The 2 weeks that followed my triumphant, solitary hike in the mountains were some of the most peaceful of my adult life. It was as if the brutal, final confrontation with my aunt and cousin, as painful as it had been, had lanced a boil that had been poisoning my relationship with my family for years. The poison was out and in its place. A quiet, healthy healing had begun. I didn't expect them to call and apologize, and they didn't. But something more important had happened. They had started to leave me alone. The constant, condescending group texts about the joys of motherhood stopped appearing on my phone. The passive-aggressive invitations to kid-friendly events I knew I wasn't really welcome at ceased. For the first time, they were respecting my boundary, not because they understood it, but because I had. By refusing to engage in their drama, simply walked away from the battlefield. My husband, Tom, and I fell back into the happy, quiet rhythm of our own life. I was deep into a new, exciting project at work, designing a series of public rooftop gardens for a new downtown development. My days were filled with blueprints, with soil samples, with the satisfying, creative work of building something beautiful and lasting. My life was full. My heart was at peace. I felt a sense of freedom so profound it was almost a physical lightness. I had finally, truly, accepted that my worth was not determined by their approval. And then, on a Tuesday night, 2 weeks to the day after the disastrous baby shower, my phone rang at 2 o'clock in the morning. The caller ID was my Aunt Carol. A 2 a.m. call from my aunt could only mean one thing: a catastrophe. My first, panicked thought was for my own parents. I answered, my heart pounding. "Aunt Carol," I said, my voice thick with sleep. "What is it? Is everyone okay?" The sound that came from the other end of the line was not a voice. It was a raw, ragged, hysterical sob. "Anna, oh. Thank God you answered," she wailed, her voice a mess of panic and tears. "It's Jessica. It's the baby. It's a complete and utter disaster." I sat bolt upright in bed, my sleepiness vanishing in a surge of adrenaline. Tom, woken by the noise, sat up beside me, his face a mask of concern. "What happened?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Is the baby all right?" The baby, a little girl named Emily, had been born just a week after the shower. "The baby is fine," she sobbed, "for now. But Anna, Jessica, and her husband, Brandon, they've been arrested." I just stared into the darkness of my bedroom, my mind struggling to process the words. "Arrested for what? I don't even understand it all," she cried, her words tumbling out in a frantic, incoherent stream. Something about Brandon's law firm, fraud, embezzlement, the FBI, Anna. "The FBI raided their house tonight. They took them both. They took everything, the cars, the computers. Oh God, it's a nightmare." Jessica and her perfect, successful, wealthy husband, arrested by the FBI. The pillars of my family's social world had just crumbled into dust. They were living a lie. "Anna," my aunt continued, her voice a shattered whisper, "all of it. The big house, the fancy cars, the expensive wedding. It was all funded with stolen money. Money Brandon was embezzling from his clients at the firm. And Jessica. Jessica knew she was spending it as fast as he could steal it. The perfect, beautiful, over-the-top baby shower I had been so cruelly excluded from flashed in my mind. The expensive gifts, the couture maternity gown, the lavish catering, all of it paid for with stolen money. A cold, sick feeling washed over me. "But the baby," I said, my voice urgent, my mind cutting through the drama to the one thing that mattered: Emily. "Where is she? Who is with her?" My aunt let out a fresh wave of soul-crushing sobs. "That's why I'm calling. Anna." She wept. "When they arrested Jessica and Brandon, Child Protective Services took the baby." "What?" I gasped. My tiny, 2-week-old second cousin was in the custody of strangers. "They won't give her to me," she cried, her voice full of a new, indignant rage. "Or to Megan. We are her grandmothers, but they said that because of the nature of the criminal investigation. The entire immediate family is considered an unstable environment. They need to place her in temporary foster care with a relative who is completely removed from the situation." She took a deep, shuddering breath. "Jessica's lawyer just called me from the Federal Detention Center. Jessica, She's a wreck. But she was clear about one thing. She told them there is only one person in this entire family that she trusts to take care of her daughter. The only person she knows is responsible enough, stable enough, and sensible enough to be a mother to her child right now. A new, strange, and terrible silence fell over the line. I knew what she was going to say before she said it, but my brain refused to believe it. It was too ironic, too insane, too utterly, completely unbelievable. She named you, Anna, my aunt whispered, her voice a mixture of desperation, humiliation, and a grudging, resentful awe. She told the social worker, she told her lawyer, that the only person in the world she wants them to give her baby to is you. I just sat there, in the dark. My phone pressed to my ear, and I started to laugh. It was a wild, unhinged, and completely involuntary sound. It was the laugh of a woman who has just been told the single most ironic, most poetic, most cosmically perfect joke the universe has ever conceived. The woman who was not good enough to be invited to the baby shower because she wouldn't understand the vibe of motherhood was now being begged to be the mother. "You're kidding me," I finally said, the laughter dying in my throat. "You are actually kidding me." The woman who told me to my face that her party was a safe space for mothers now wants me, the childless, and therefore clueless, outcast of the family, to raise her child. "It's not a joke," Anna, my aunt, pleaded. "This is serious. A social worker is going to call you in the morning. They're going to ask you to take temporary legal guardianship of Emily. Please, Anna, you have to do it, for the family, for the baby, for the family." The same words they had always used to guilt me, to manipulate me, to get me to do their bidding. But the words had a different ring to them now. They were not a command. They were a desperate, pathetic plea. I thought about the last month, the smug, pitying looks, the condescending conversations, the deliberate, cruel, and public act of my own exclusion. And every angry, vengeful instinct in my body screamed at me to say no, to say, "You made your bed, now lie in it," to say, "I'm sorry, I would love to help, but as a childless woman, I'm afraid I just wouldn't understand the vibe of raising an infant. You should probably call one of the other mothers from the party. I'm sure they'd be happy to help." The revenge was so perfect, so easy, so readily available. But then I thought about the baby, a tiny, innocent, 2-week-old girl, sleeping in a sterile government nursery, a pawn in the stupid, greedy, and criminal games of her own parents. She was the one who was the real victim in all of this. She was my family, my blood. And I, the woman who had chosen not to have children of her own, was now faced with the most profound and most difficult maternal choice of my life. Do I let my own hurt, my own anger, my own desire for a well-deserved revenge stand in the way of protecting an innocent child? Or do I become the person they always, wrongly, accused me of not being? Do I become a mother? "Anna, are you there?" My aunt's desperate, sniffling voice came from the phone. "Please, say something." I looked over at my husband, Tom, who had been listening to the entire, insane conversation, his face a mask of stunned disbelief. He just looked at me, his eyes full of a quiet, unwavering support. He didn't tell me what to do. He just trusted me to make the right choice. The social worker would call in the morning. I had a few hours to decide, a few hours to determine the entire future of a child's life, and my own. The woman who wasn't good enough for the party was now the only one good enough for the baby. The irony wasn't just a joke anymore. It was a profound, life-altering, and deeply, deeply serious responsibility. And it was now mine to accept, or to refuse. Sleep did not come. How could it? My mind was a raging, chaotic sea, tossed between the waves of a bitter, vindictive anger and a deep, profound, and aching pity, not for my cousin, Jessica, but for her baby, a tiny, innocent, 1-week-old girl who had been born into a world of lies and criminality, and who was now, at this very moment, sleeping in a sterile government crib, a ward of the state. My husband, Tom, was my lighthouse in that storm. He just sat with me in the dark of our living room, listening as I paced and raged and cried and tried to make sense of the impossible choice I had been handed. I could say no, I said, the words tasting like poison in my mouth. It was the revenge I deserved. The perfect karmic checkmate, I could tell them. Sorry, but as a childless woman, I'm afraid I just wouldn't understand the vibe of raising a baby. I could use their own cruel, stupid words against them. You could, Tom said quietly, his voice a calm, steady anchor. It would be justice, I argued. Mostly with myself. They treated me like I was nothing. They publicly humiliated me. They made me feel like I was less of a woman because I didn't have a child. And now they want me to take on the single greatest responsibility of motherhood. To clean up their mess, the hypocrisy is breathtaking. It is, he agreed. So I should say no, I said, trying to convince myself. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, This isn't about them anymore, Anna. It's not about your aunt, or your cousin, or their judgment. They don't matter. The only person who matters in this equation is a 1-week-old baby who has done nothing wrong. So the question isn't, what do they deserve? The question is, what does that little girl deserve? And just like that, he had cut through all the noise, all my righteous anger, and he had found the simple, quiet, and undeniable truth at the heart of it all. What did Emily deserve? She deserved to be safe. She deserved to be loved. And she deserved to be with family. My anger at my aunt and my cousin was a real, and valid, and deeply satisfying thing, but it was not more important than the well-being of an innocent child. I sat down next to my husband, the fight finally gone out of me, replaced by a weary, but clear, sense of purpose. Okay, I whispered into the darkness. Okay, I'll do it. For Emily. The call from the social worker, a woman named Miss Davis with a kind but no-nonsense voice, came at 9 o'clock the next morning, she formally, and with a great deal of careful, legal language, asked if I would be willing to be considered as the temporary legal guardian for my infant second cousin, Emily. Yes, I said, my voice clear and firm. I am. She scheduled a formal meeting for that afternoon at the Child Protective Services office. Jessica's lawyer would be there, my aunt, as the maternal grandmother, would also be present. The CPS office was a grim, depressing place, full of a quiet, institutional sadness. We were led to a small, windowless conference room. My Aunt Carol and her other daughter, my cousin Megan, both proud, card-carrying members of the Mom Club, were already there. They looked exhausted, their faces etched with a new, unfamiliar desperation. The smug, self-righteous superiority was gone, replaced by the raw, animal fear of a family in crisis. They both looked at me as I walked in with Tom, and their expressions were a complex, ugly mixture of resentment, desperation, and a grudging, hateful dependence. They needed me, and they hated me for it. The social worker, Ms. Davis, and a man in a sharp suit who introduced himself as Jessica's lawyer, Mr. Albright, began the meeting. Miss Davis laid out the situation. Jessica and Brandon were facing serious federal charges. They had been denied bail. Their assets were frozen. They were, for the foreseeable future, completely unable to care for their child. The primary goal of CPS, she explained, her voice full of a professional empathy, is to place a child with a suitable family member whenever possible. Mrs. Hayes, she said, turning to my aunt, as the maternal grandmother, you are, of course, the most natural choice. A wave of profound, arrogant relief washed over my aunt's face. She sat up a little straighter. This was it. She was about to get what she wanted. However, Miss Davis continued, her expression turning serious, given that your own home is considered a part of the ongoing federal investigation, and given the significant emotional turmoil your family is currently experiencing, we have some serious reservations about placing a vulnerable infant in your care at this time. My aunt's face fell. But I'm her grandmother, she insisted, her voice a rising tide of indignation. And we respect that, Ms. Davis said calmly. But our primary duty is to the child's well-being, and in these circumstances, stability is our number one priority. She then turned to me, which brings us to you, Miss Vance. My aunt and my cousin both turned to glare at me, their eyes full of a new, hot resentment. Before we proceed, my aunt said, her voice dripping with a sweet poison, I feel I must point out, for the record, that while my niece Anna is a lovely person, She has no experience. She is not a mother. She has no children of her own. I'm not sure she is a suitable placement for a newborn baby. She was trying, one last time, to use my own life choice as a weapon against me, to paint me as unqualified. It was then that Jessica's lawyer, Mr. Albright, cleared his throat. "If I may, Miss Davis," he said, opening his briefcase. "My client, Ms. Jessica Sterling, was very clear in her wishes. She anticipated this exact conflict, and she prepared a formal, notarized, and legally binding declaration of her choice for temporary guardianship before she was taken into custody." He pulled out a document. "She asked me to read it aloud at this meeting." He put on his glasses and began to read. And the words he read, my cousin Jessica's words, were a bombshell that blew the last, rotting foundations of my old family to pieces. "To whom it may concern," he read, his voice a calm, legal drone. "In the event that I am unable to care for my daughter, Emily, it is my sole and unwavering wish that her temporary legal guardianship be granted to my cousin, Ms. Anna Vance." My aunt let out a small, strangled gasp. "I know that this choice may seem unconventional to my family." The lawyer continued to read. "My mother and my sister are both wonderful mothers to their own children, but I have come to realize, in the past few weeks, that their love and their judgment is often clouded by their own obsession with appearances, with what they believe is the right way to live a life." I watched my aunt's face as she heard her own daughter's words read aloud. It was a look of pure, unadulterated, and deeply satisfying humiliation. "The reason I'm choosing my cousin, Anna," the lawyer read on, his voice clear and steady, "is not despite the fact that she is not a mother. It is because of it. Anna is the only person in my entire family who has built a life on a foundation of genuine stability, of quiet integrity, of a profound and unshakable sense of her own self. She is the only one who has never judged me. She is the only one who has ever seen me as a person, and not just as a mother, or a daughter, or a wife. She is the only person I trust to love my daughter for who she is, not for who my family wants her to be." The final lines were a direct, devastating indictment of the very club from which I had been so cruelly excluded. "I do not need a mother to take care of my daughter right now," he read. "I need a guardian, a protector, a stable, responsible, and decent human being, and the only person in my family who has consistently proven herself to be all of those things is Anna." He finished reading. The silence in the room was absolute. My Aunt Carol just sat there, her face a ruin of shame and disbelief. Her own daughter had just, in a legal document, declared her an unfit guardian, and had praised the very person she had so smugly and cruelly cast out. Ms. Davis, the social worker, finally turned to me. Her own eyes were a little misty. "Well," she said softly, "that is about as clear a directive as I have ever heard." She looked at me. "Ms. Vance, are you willing to accept the temporary legal guardianship of Emily Sterling under these terms?" I looked at my aunt, at her shattered, defeated face. I felt no triumph. I felt no joy, just a deep, profound sadness for the brokenness of it all. Then I looked at my husband, Tom. He just gave me a small, quiet nod, a look of pure, unwavering support. "Yes," I said, my voice clear and strong. "I am." The meeting was over, we signed the papers, and just like that, in a sterile, windowless conference room, on a gray Wednesday afternoon, my life changed forever. I walked out of that office not just as Anna Vance, the landscape architect, the childless outcast. I walked out as the legal guardian of a 2-week-old baby, a mother, in all the ways that truly mattered. Tom and I drove directly from the CPS office to the small, anonymous foster home where Emily had been staying. We walked into a quiet, clean nursery, and a kind-faced woman placed a small, sleeping, blanket-wrapped bundle into my arms. I looked down at her. My cousin's daughter, my own tiny, new, and completely unexpected family. She had a full head of dark hair and a small, perfect, rosebud mouth. She was beautiful, and she was, for now, my responsibility, my charge, my little girl. I looked up at Tom, my eyes full of a new, terrifying, and overwhelming love. "Well," I whispered, I guess we're going to need a car seat. The drive from the Child Protective Services office to the foster home where they were keeping Emily was the most surreal and terrifying 10 minutes of my life. My husband, Tom, was driving, and I was in the passenger seat, my mind a blank. White panic. "We don't have anything," I whispered. The reality of our situation crashing down on me. We don't have a crib. We don't have diapers, or formula, or bottles. We don't have a car seat. Tom, we can't just take a baby. Tom just reached over and took my hand. "Yes, we can," he said, his voice a calm, steady anchor in my storm. "We'll stop at Target on the way. We'll figure it out. We're a team." And so, my first act as a new, reluctant, and completely unqualified mother was a frantic, panicked shopping spree at a suburban big box store. We ran through the aisles, grabbing things off the shelves in a daze. A car seat, a box of diapers, a dozen different kinds of baby formula because I had no idea what she needed. We were two childless adults who had just been handed a tiny, fragile, human grenade, and we were desperately trying to read the instruction manual before it went off. Bringing Emily home was terrifying. She was so small, so impossibly fragile. The first night, neither of us slept. We just sat on the floor by her borrowed travel crib, watching the gentle rise and fall of her tiny chest, listening to her soft, snuffly breaths, our hearts in our throats. Every tiny squeak she made sent a jolt of panic through me. I was a landscape architect. Tom was a history professor. We knew how to design a park and how to analyze a 19th century political treaty. We had no idea how to keep a 2-week-old baby alive. But slowly, hour by painful, sleep-deprived hour, we began to figure it out. We learned the art of the midnight feeding. We learned how to change a diaper. We learned the specific, subtle difference between her "I'm hungry" cry and her "I'm uncomfortable" cry. We were not parents, but we were learning. The first phone call from my Aunt Carol came on the third day. Her voice, which had been so full of a desperate, pleading humility at the CPS office, was now tinged with a familiar, demanding edge. "Anna, darling," she began, "how is my precious grandbaby?" My grandbaby. She was already trying to reclaim her territory. "She's fine, Aunt Carol," I said, my voice polite but cool. "Well, your cousin Megan and I would like to come over this afternoon to see her," she announced. It was not a request. It was a royal decree. And in that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. I could fall back into my old role, the accommodating, people-pleasing niece who never made waves. Or I could be the person Jessica, in her one single moment of clarity, had believed me to be, the stable, responsible guardian, the protector. "Actually, Aunt Carol," I said, and my voice was a calm, quiet, an unbreachable wall of steel. "That won't be possible." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I had never, in my entire life, said no to her. The baby's pediatrician was very clear. I continued, the lie coming to me easily, a necessary piece of armor for the first month, while her immune system is still so fragile. We are to have absolutely no visitors. Doctor's orders. I'm sure you, as a mother, understand the importance of following medical advice. I had used her own sacred text, the Gospel of Motherhood, against her. She was so shocked, she couldn't even argue. "Oh," she finally stammered. "Well, of course, for the baby. When we are ready for visitors," I said, "I will let you know. And when you do come, there will be some rules. There will be no posting of any pictures of Emily on any social media platform, under any circumstances. And there will be no unsolicited parenting advice. My home, and my daughter's home, is not a place for judgment or condescension. It is a place of peace and respect. If you cannot abide by those rules, you will not be welcome." Am I clear? The silence on her end was a thing of beautiful, satisfying, and deeply unfamiliar power. I had just set the terms. I had just drawn the boundary. The gatekeeper to my life, and to my new daughter's life, was now me. The months that followed were a blur of chaos, of exhaustion, and of a new, profound, and completely unexpected kind of joy. Being a mother, it turned out, was the hardest and the best thing I had ever done. My life, which had once been so quiet and orderly, was now a constant, beautiful mess of baby toys, of spit up on my favorite sweaters, of a love so fierce and so overwhelming it sometimes left me breathless. My career as a landscape architect was put on hold. My new, full-time job was Emily. Tom was a true partner in every sense of the word. He would come home from the university and take over, letting me have a few precious hours to myself. We were a real team, a real family, forged in the fires of this strange, unexpected crisis. I heard updates about Jessica and Brandon from their lawyer. They had both pleaded guilty and were sentenced to 3 years in a minimum security federal prison. The perfect, lavish life they had built on a foundation of stolen money had cost them everything. It had cost them their freedom, and it had cost them their daughter. I took Emily to visit her mother once a month. The visits were heartbreaking. We would sit in a sterile, impersonal visiting room, and Jessica would just hold her daughter and cry. The old, smug, and self-righteous cousin I had known was gone, replaced by a broken, remorseful woman who was full of a lifetime of regret. "Thank you, Anna," she would say to me, every single time, her eyes full of a gratitude that was painful to witness. "Thank you for being the person I always should have been." My relationship with the rest of my family, the proud members of the Mom Club, settled into a new, strange, and distant kind of peace. They were humbled. Their world, which had been so full of a loud, certain, and judgmental righteousness, had been silenced by their own daughter's self-destruction. And now, if they wanted to see their granddaughter, their niece, they had to come to me. They had to play by my rules, and they did. They were polite, they were respectful, and they never, ever offered me parenting advice. It turned out, the woman who had been deemed unworthy of even attending a baby shower was, in fact, a damn good mother. We celebrated Emily's first birthday last weekend. It wasn't a lavish, over-the-top affair. We had a small party in our backyard, just us, Tom and I, a few of our close friends, and my aunt and my cousins, who had been on their best behavior for a full year. As I watched Emily, my beautiful, thriving, happy 1-year-old, smash her face into her first birthday cake, I thought about the profound, beautiful irony of my life. My family had spent years judging me, pitying me, trying to make me feel less than because I had not chosen their path, because I was not a mother. They had created a club, a secret society of motherhood, and they had posted a big, fat "No Girls Allowed" sign on the door, aimed directly at me, and in the end, their own chosen one, their golden child, had in her moment of greatest need, turned to me. She had handed me the keys to their kingdom, and she had, with her own words, confirmed the truth that had been hiding in plain sight all along, that being a mother is not a biological status. It is not a club you join. It is a verb. It is an action. It is about showing up. It is about doing the hard, thankless, and beautiful work of putting a small, helpless human's needs before your own. It is about protecting and nurturing and loving unconditionally. The woman who was not fit for the party, it turned out, was the only one who was truly fit for the job. So, I'll leave you with this. To anyone out there who has ever been judged for their life choices, who has ever been made to feel like they are not enough because their path is different, please remember this story. Thank you for listening. Hit that subscribe button if you believe that love, not biology, is what truly makes a family. And remember, you do not need to give birth to a child to have a mother's heart. And a mother's heart is the most powerful, most resilient, and most beautiful force in the entire universe.